Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about realistic muscle gains over time for people who are natural or drug-free. What are realistic expectations? So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. And this area gets confused a lot because of a lot of people out there using drugs who claim natural because of various programs that promise unrealistic gains and everything else. But what do we know based upon various amounts of research? We know that pretty much every year that you train, if you were on good training before, you're going to gain about half of what you gained the year before, sometimes less. Somewhere in the 40 to 50% range of what you gained the year before in terms of muscle mass. That's reasonable. So what are we talking about in terms of that? Well, people who are on good training programs, you're getting good nutrition, plenty of sleep, your first year of training, your novice years, your golden years, so to speak. It's normal for someone training really hard to gain between 1 and 2 pounds of muscle per month. Now, I don't want people to think that means that they're going to gain 20 pounds of muscle in the first year, because you're hearing that 2 and people are going 12 months times 2, that's 24 pounds of muscle. That's actually unrealistic, because what happens, that's on the front end of it. You should expect, even if you're gaining 2 pounds of muscle early on per month, expect it to drop to 1 pound before long. Meaning maybe your first 5 months, you might gain 2 pounds of muscle during that. Then you end up gaining 1 pound of muscle per month the last 7. So really, it ends up being closer to, 17 pounds. But that's actually really, really good. And the reason the range is so big, people will say, what about the genetically gifted? Don't they gain more than that? No, that's the 2 pound of muscle guys. All right, that's the guys who gain that 17, 18 pounds of muscle in the first year. Honestly, for most guys, it's probably closer or more realistic to expect something down between 10 to 15. Shorter guys are going to gain closer to 1. Taller guys are going to gain closer to 2. And it has to do with the fact that you have a bigger frame. You have more muscle fibers already. You have more muscle mass already. So to grow in proportion to the rest of your body, if you're just bigger all around, you're going to gain more muscle than a person whose frame is smaller in terms of total ounces and pounds. But in terms of percentage of your body weight, it might be pretty similar. So something you need to factor in there. And I'm going to get to some exceptions to this in a minute as to why some people will say, well, no, I surpassed these numbers, you're wrong. I'm going to cover that in a minute, because some people are already thinking that. They're like, no. I've seen people beat this. So, year 2, what are you going to expect? 1/2 pound to 1 pound of muscle. All right, so you're talking 1/2 pound times 12, 6 pounds. Maybe someone could gain 10 pounds if they're really lucky and train really hard that second year. So after that, then it's going to drop down. It's going to be something like 1/4 pound to 1/2 pound a month for your third year. You guys see how that works? It's a diminished return. And so eventually, it's like most experts will tell you, most people out there, you've gained all the muscle you're going to gain just about after 5 years. What you're going to gain after about the 5-year mark is not going to be registerable on a scale. You're going to see fluctuations in your body weight just from the amount of water you drink or how much you sweat on a day-to-day basis than what you're going to gain in muscle mass in 3, 4, 5 months. All right, sometimes even 6 months. Because usually by that point, people are gaining less than 1 pound of muscle per year, even on a really good program. Now, what people need to understand, diminished returns means less and less, but it doesn't mean you stop gaining. So people say, oh, well, that's your natural limit. And I would say no, because if you gained another 1/2 pound of muscle every year for 10 years, that's 5 more pounds of muscle. So think of it in those terms. That's still gains. It's just that you're playing the long game at that point, not the short game. And those are realistic, and that's why when I tell people that gaining 25 pounds of muscle in a lifetime of drug-free training is pretty good and pretty realistic. And you'll see people who will say, well, that sucks. But I've done other videos on that, breaking down why. No, that's actually really realistic, and that's enough to completely transform your physique. Because think about it. If you're 155 pounds at 12, 13% body fat, so you're a somewhat skinny guy, and you put on 25 pounds of muscle, 25 pounds of muscle is going to change even your body composition as far as the percentage of your fat, right? So you're going to look leaner, because technically you're going to be leaner, but you're going to look leaner while weighing 180 than you did at 155 as kind of maybe a skinny guy. That's a tremendous difference. And people need to understand, when you look back, some of before drug use became where it is today, even in bodybuilding, What sort of stats did guys have who were really lean? Frank Zane was like 5'11", 6 foot at 195. Actually, he competed at 185 sometimes. All right, guys weren't really big, and he was on drugs. He was on drugs and was Mr. Olympia, weighing like 185. So think about that in terms of muscle mass. He wasn't a small guy. He was small by drug standards. Modern drug standards, not a small guy. So when you look at it in that perspective, it makes a lot more sense of understanding it. Though that's pretty good. 25 pounds of solid muscle gain in a lifetime, if you've done it drug-free, is actually an accomplishment. It's something to be proud of. I mean, you've achieved something. So what are the exceptions? Because some people say, well, you know, I beat that number. I beat that number. Well, the most obvious one is going to be you got taller. Men don't stop getting taller till they're 21 years old. So if you started lifting weights and you were 18 and you gained another 1.5 inches of height, you gained bone mass and you gained muscle mass. In fact, 1.5 inches of height, you're going to gain several pounds even if you didn't work out. You're going to gain several pounds of lean mass. You know, because your muscles, if they stay the same diameter but your arms and legs grow longer, you get taller. You get taller. If the muscle stays the same diameter, it has to get bigger. You're going to gain muscle weight. So even if you didn't work out and your biceps and quads and everything didn't get any bigger in diameter, they still got longer. That's muscle mass. Your bones have weight, they all got longer. See what I mean? You'll gain lean mass. You'll gain lean tissue, pounds of it, from getting taller without having to work out. So that's different. That is a completely different set of gains that you made. It has nothing to do with your training. So you didn't gain that from training. So we're talking about the amount of muscle you can gain from actually lifting weights and from your nutrition. That's what we're talking about here. And that's a totally different scenario. And people will get that confused, particularly guys who started lifting before they were 21 years old. They're not factoring that in. Well, they gained 1.5 inches, 2 inches, 3 inches of height. That's going to take the scale weight up. And it means you're going to gain muscle and bone and everything from that. That's all lean tissue. So that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about purely from the weightlifting. So that's one that throws people off right there. And anyone who had started training before 21, who jumped on that said, oh, okay, that makes sense. There's another big one too. There's the fact that fat gain gets mistaken for muscle gain. And that's going to be one people don't grasp. Generally speaking, if you gain significant amounts of muscle mass and you only gain a little bit of fat, you're going to look leaner. So you're going to assume that you lost fat, and that will throw your calculations off, meaning if over a period of time you gain 10 pounds of solid muscle and you only gain 2 pounds of fat, you're probably going to look leaner. So some people are going to assume they lost fat. They're going to be like, I lost 2 pounds of fat. The reality is you gained 2. So they're sitting here thinking they gained 14 pounds of solid muscle, but they only gained 10. Because they're calculating in fat loss when there was actually fat gain. And a lot of people are going to say, wait, how can that be? I don't understand. How is that possible? Because, number one, when you gain fat, or you gain muscle and you don't gain enough fat to make up the difference, your fat gets spread further out. Meaning, if your arm gains 1.5 inches in diameter in muscle, what happens to the fat under your skin? It gets spread just a little thinner around it. It gets spread a little thinner. You look leaner even though you didn't lose fat. All right? You look leaner even though you didn't lose fat. You're going to think you got leaner. So if you're not gaining much fat around your waistline, then you're going to think that you got leaner from gaining muscle. And in fact, if you gained a little bit of muscle around your abs, they're going to protrude a little more even underneath the fat. Even under the little whatever amount of fat you have, if you're lean enough where you can almost see the outline of abs, if you don't gain significant fat around your waist, but your abdominals grow and develop more, they're going to look a little more defined, aren't they? So you're going to look leaner even in the waistline with the same amount of fat, or if you don't gain very much. So there's that, and then thinking about something else. You guys ever look at a raw steak? Is it all muscle? Or is there marbling in there? Intermuscular fat. People who lift weights tend to gain a little more fat in their muscle tissue when they gain weight. Some of the fat that you're gaining is in your muscles. In fact, If you only gained a couple pounds of fat while you were lifting weights and gaining 10 pounds of muscle, a quarter, or in some cases, it could be half of that fat could be intermuscular, but probably a fourth of it probably is. So out of that 2 pounds, about half a pound of it is probably inside your muscle tissue. Muscle looks bigger when you have more fat in it, doesn't it? Why? Because it is bigger. It's bigger in diameter. You think that intermuscular fat makes a muscle look less muscular? No, in fact, it can look more plump, and I'll give you guys a perfect example. Some people are going to understand as soon as I explain it. There are certain different groups that get accused of having certain genetic traits ethnically. People always talk about black genetics. You want to know one of the traits that they found to be very common in African American males when we've studied athletes and other people? You know what we found at universities? And this isn't true universally, and I want people to understand that just because something is a tendency doesn't mean it's universally true. But they have found that black males store more fat inside their muscles in their arms. They store a little more fat than other ethnic groups on average. And that's not universally true, because there are some that suck at that too. Just like any other group, genes are not constant through every ethnic group, right? They just aren't. So you can't say it's all of them. But there is a definite, measurable predisposition towards it. So how many guys out there notice? A lot of black guys, not all of them. A lot of black guys seem to look like they have fuller arms easier than other groups when they train sometimes. And that's one reason people think that that's a big genetic gift, that it seems to be a really big deal. A lot of it is just that black men hold a little more intermuscular fat in their arms. And this has been found with studies, with DEXA scans, CAT scans, everything. Makes their arms look a little fuller, a little bigger, because it's inside the muscle. Now, what I mean by not everyone has that, I know there's going to be some black guy who's going to chime in and says, you know what, I'm as black as can be, and I suck, my arms suck. I train the hell out of my arms and they still suck. Well, you weren't one of those who were born with that gene. That's just reality. You didn't get it. Because again, these things aren't true, and it's not to say that there aren't going to be people of other ethnic groups who don't have that same trait, because they do. But in proportion, that's there. But look at the stereotype that trait has possibly created. How many guys out there always say, man, a lot of black guys seem to really develop really good arms really easy. And it's because, not all, but a lot of black guys have more intermuscular fat in their arms. They're just born that way. They just store it that way. And it creates the illusion of a thicker, fuller arm when it happens. So you want proof, there you go. So what happens again, people think when they've only gained a little bit of fat, because some of it's been intermuscular, it makes the muscle look bigger. And the muscle is displacing subcutaneous fat under the skin, that a person looks leaner when they've actually gotten fatter. That will throw people's estimates off really bad. You will have people who think that they gained 4 pounds more muscle than they actually gained, or 5 pounds more muscle than they actually gained. But the truth is, they might have only gained 10 pounds of muscle, and they're thinking they gained 14 or 15 because they gained very small amounts of fat, but looked leaner as a result of it. And so there's your two big exceptions to why sometimes these numbers get skewed. But the truth is, these are realistic numbers. And when you see someone who breaks these numbers, when you see someone who's been training for 5 years and they suddenly put on 8 pounds of muscle in 1 year or 10 pounds of muscle in 1 year, guess what? You guys should be able to guess. I shouldn't need to tell you. He just went on some creatine and whey protons. That's what just happened. Because people who've been training hard for 5 years very rarely gain even a full pound of muscle mass per year. So if someone comes up and gains 8 pounds or 10 pounds of muscle, well, that sounds like a blast of gear to me. And so again, don't use that person as your example, because people who've been training a few years don't make significant gains year to year anymore. Those significant gains come in that first year that you train really hard. And so a lot of them in that second year, and after that, it just slows way down in the diminished returns that I described earlier. So there you have it, guys. Those are your realistic standards. Those are the exceptions to it, and why sometimes some people might think that they're wrong. But the truth is, there's been quite a bit of research done on it, and those gains are pretty much what you can expect to be in that range. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.